Hey guys, tonight we journey back to Tudor England, a place of corsets and cod, where everyone smells vaguely of meat pies, and no one has a full set of teeth past the age of 30. You're waking up in a timber-framed cottage, the kind that looks charming in travel brochures, but is currently freezing cold, smells like wet straw, and houses more rodents than you'd like to count. The thatched roof leaks when it rains, and the wooden shutters don't keep out the wind. Your breath hangs in the air as you stir from your straw mattress, which is technically your family's bed. You, your siblings, and the family goose all share it for warmth. Your stomach rumbles. You won't be having breakfast in the way modern folks understand it. No, eggs Benedict here. Instead, you're chewing stale bread soaked in a beverage consumed by everyone, including children, because water's basically poison. The ale is warm, flat, and tastes vaguely of fermented grain socks. Yep. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know your location and what time it is, where you're tuning in from. I love seeing how far our sleepy little history club reaches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You finish your ale-bread slurry and head outside. Your breath clouds the crisp air, and your shoes, if you're lucky enough to have them, are wooden clogs. Most days, you walk barefoot through mud, livestock droppings, and occasionally human waste. It's not that people are trying to be filthy, it's just that sewage goes into the gutter, and gutters are literally just the middle of the street. You get used to the smell, or at least, that's what you tell yourself. By midday, you finally score your main meal, a meat pie. Sounds delicious, right? Until you realize the meat in question is mystery meat. Possibly rat, maybe pigeon, or even spoiled beef from the butcher's reject pile. It's seasoned with whatever herbs you've managed to grow, assuming your neighbor's goats didn't trample your garden last week. And oh yes, this particular pie was baked days ago and reheated over a smoky fire that makes your eyes tear up more than any soap opera. Now let's talk teeth. Sugar has recently become all the rage, thanks to trade with the New World. The nobility love their candied fruits and spiced treats, and you're wanting to emulate them, save up all month to buy a hunk of molasses-soaked sweetbread. It rips through your molars like sandpaper, but the momentary bliss is worth it. Until you wake up 2 days later with a swollen jaw and a throbbing ache that stretches into your ears. No dentists in sight. The local solution. Someone named Old Nan yanks your tooth out with iron tongs. She's not licensed. She's not even sober. Mainstream historians agree that Tudor diets were harsh on the digestive tract and disastrous for dental health. Diaries of the time even describe royal breath as hot and rank as the devil's backside. And yet, having black teeth became trendy. You might darken your teeth on purpose with soot just to look like you could afford sugar. Yes, you're voluntarily mimicking tooth rot. Fashion hurts. Your guts aren't doing any better. A lack of refrigeration means meat spoils quickly, and spices are expensive. So rather than toss the food, people would just douse it in vinegar or stews until the odor was mostly masked. You eat it anyway, because there's no alternative. The phrase "trust your gut" does not apply in Tudor England. Your gut is wrong. And let's not forget the ale. It's weak, yes, but it's also constantly in your system. Pregnant, drink ale. A toddler with a fever. Yep, while this likely sterilized some bacteria, it also meant that dehydration and mild alcoholism were practically societal norms. That sluggish feeling you have mid-afternoon isn't. A food commits the combination of light. One fringe detail worth mentioning. There's a Tudor folk belief that chewing wormwood helps prevent tooth decay. You try it, and your mouth goes numb. For a moment, you feel like it might actually work, until you later find out wormwood is toxic in large amounts. Historians still argue whether these herbal remedies were helpful or harmful overall, but judging by your increasing number of loose teeth, it's not looking good. Occasionally, you dream of better food. You hear rumors of roasted swan, venison in berry sauce, and something called marchpane, a sugary almond delight served at court, but that world feels light years away. Your reality is chewing barley and hoping it doesn't turn your stomach inside out. And of course, nobody brushes. Not really. Maybe a rag rubbed with salt. Maybe a twig from a tree that's supposed to have cleansing properties. There's no toothpaste, and mouthwash would be laughed out of town. So your mouth smells like whatever you just ate, or worse, what your stomach is trying to digest. Romantic, isn't it? By nightfall, your breath could curdle milk. You lie back on your straw bed, cover yourself with a flea-infested blanket, and think about how you survived another day. You still have most of your teeth. Sort of. and that counts for something. You're up again before the sun, and this time it's not hunger waking you, it's itching. Relentless, maddening, itching. Fleas, lice, maybe even a cheeky bedbug or two. Whatever it is, it's having a party in your woolen underlayers, and you're the snack. You peel off your sleeping blanket, trying not to gag at the smell. Not just your own body odor, but the collective funk of your entire household packed into a small, unventilated room that hasn't seen a scrub brush in ... Well, hygiene isn't quite a thing yet. Not in the way you hope. You're not about to hop into a morning shower, lather up with citrus-scented gel, and towel off under a sunlit skylight. Instead, you splash your face with cold, possibly muddy water from a nearby bucket. Toothpaste? Nope. Deodorant. Try stuffing lavender in your shirt or rubbing mint leaves under your arms if you're lucky enough to grow any. This is as close to spa treatment as Tudor life gets. Your clothes, a scratchy, faded linen shift underneath a heavy woolen tunic that never quite stops itching, and you're never fully clean. Not even close. People in this time might bathe once a month, even less. Too much bathing opens the pores to disease, says the local wisdom, which conveniently aligns with the lack of indoor plumbing. You scratch again and try to shake out your shift. It does nothing. A flea jumps onto your arm. You flick it away and sigh. If you're a woman, you're also dealing with layers of petticoats, stays, and perhaps a coiffure little cap to keep your hair in place, and the lice contained. Not really. They're already planning their next family reunion, one under your scalp. And if you're a man, your options aren't much better. You've got hose-tightly fitting trousers tied to your doublet with a cordand, probably an itchy wool cap, all of which gets soaked in sweat during any physical labor and dry as stiff like cardboard. And believe me, you will be doing physical labor. Quirky detailed time. Some people stitched tiny pouches of dried herbs, called sweating bags, into their clothing to mask odor and ward off illness. The result, you now smell like a spoiled bouquet in a damp sock. Delightful. Even royalty wasn't immune. Queen Elizabeth herself reportedly owned dozens of elaborate gowns, but rarely changed her undergarments. In one particularly infamous quote, she claimed to bathe once a month, whether I need it or not. Whether she said it exactly that way is debated, but either way, the sentiment stuck. And you, loyal subject, are following her fragrant example. You head outside for a bit of fresh air, or what passes for fresh. The street stinks. Remember, waste goes out the window. Literally, you're walking along a dirt path where pigs roam freely, chickens peck at manure, and children splash in puddles you really hope are just water. Spoiler then. And inside homes, people use rush as bundles of reeds spread across the floor to soak up filth. Every few months, these get replaced, or just lay it over. So you're stepping on a biological lasagna of food crumbs, animal droppings, and hair. Born AP. Historians still argue whether this practice actually helped with cleanliness or just made everything smell vaguely of wet dog and moldy onion. It probably depends on the household and how often the local cats took their business inside. You wander to the communal well to fetch water. It's a social event and a survival task. The water is cloudy, maybe something died upstream, maybe not. You take your chances. You boil it later, but even then, you don't fully trust it. It tastes a bit like rust and desperation. Feeling brave, you decide to give yourself a dry bath. A bit of linen dipped in vinegar rubbed on your arms and neck. Stings like crazy. You mutter a curse. But hey, at least you smell like salad dressing now. Your neighbor sees you scratching and suggests a cure. Hang garlic round your neck. Classic Tudor logic. If it doesn't help, at least the fleas will hate it. And so will your friends. Meanwhile, your hair is a tangled mess. No shampoo, no conditioner, maybe some goose fat or egg yolk if you're fancy, or ash and rainwater for a deep, but good luck rinsing it out without a proper basin. Most just keep their hair braided, tied up, or covered to hide the chaos beneath. A particularly odd belief circulating at this time. Rubbing a dead mole on your scalp might cure baldness. Another wearing a weasel's tooth around your neck will keep the fleas away. You try both. They do nothing. You still itch. Now you just smell like death and superstition. By the time evening rolls around, you're exhausted. You've scratched yourself raw, your tunic is stiff with sweat, and your armpit herbs have long given up the fight. You lay back down in your straw-filled tick mattress, close your eyes, and pray the fleas are full enough to leave you alone for a few hours. The next morning doesn't begin with the gentle chirping of birds. It starts with coughing deep, wet, terrifying coughing from somewhere nearby, maybe next door. maybe your own chest, and that alone is enough to jolt you upright in bed. You blink through the gloom. Light filters weakly through a grimy windowpane. Your heart pounds. Because in Tudor England, a cough isn't just a cough. It could mean plague. You've heard the whispers. Someone 2 streets over died last night. Bellman came in the dark, ringing softly, announcing, "Bring out your dead." A phrase that should only exist in grim satabute here. It's routine. And terrifyingly real. You rub your temples, trying to calm down. You've got enough to do without panicking over disease. Like hauling water again, feeding the chickens, making sure the rats haven't eaten your stored grain. But as you step outside, you see something chilling. A red X smeared on a neighbor's door, made with some kind of paint, or maybe pig's blood. It marks the house as infected. A shiver runs down your spine. You pick up your pace, try not to breathe too deeply. The bubonic plague hit Tudor England hard. Outbreaks were common every decade or so. Entire towns would be decimated. And medicine, oh, you sweet summer child. Tudor medicine is a terrifying blend of leeches, superstition, and guesswork. If you're sick, the local barber surgeon might cut a vein open to balance your humors. That's right, blood. He may also offer to shave your head and smear on a poultice of onions, butter, and goose dung. And if that fails, he might recommend wrapping a dead pigeon around your neck. You agree to the pigeon. You're desperate. Mainstream historians agree that plague doctors didn't appear in their iconic beak masks until the 1600s. But even before that, terrifying figures in leather hoods and herbal amulets haunted the streets. Their job, remove the dead and try not to die themselves. And they usually failed. You dodge around a dog gnawing a bone that uncomfortably looks human-sized and make your way to market. It's not much safer here. Crowds gather in tight knots. No masks, no hand sanitizer, just body heat and the occasional sneeze. You hear someone sneeze violently behind you. Instinctively, you flinch. A few steps later, you swear you feel a tickle in your own throat. Fringe tidbit. It was believed that smelling strong odors could protect you from illness, so you see people walking around with oranges stuffed with cloves, or handkerchiefs soaked in vinegar held to their faces. Wealthy folks had pomander little metal balls filled with scented herbs. You, however, have a clove of garlic tied to your belt and a sprig of mint tucked in your collar. You smell like a cursed salad. Historians still argue whether quarantine efforts were effective. Some towns locked themselves down entirely, banning travelers and burning infected homes. Others did nothing, hoping for the best. Most fell somewhere in between, isolating families by painting marks on their doors and delivering food by tossing it through windows with long sticks. It's not foolproof. You still see the rats, bold as ever, darting through puddles and climbing into and rats, as you've heard, carry fleas. And those fleas carry death. You shuffle home, heart thudding. You pass a cart hauling 2 wrapped bodies. No one looks surprised. Children play nearby, seemingly numb to it all. Even your youngest sibling, usually too little to understand, asks, "Will we get the sickness too?" You don't answer. That night, you lie awake. Every cough sounds louder. Every creak of the floorboards is a herald of doom. You breathe through a cloth soaked in vinegar, not because it works, but because it feels like doing something. If your family's unlucky, and the signs appear a swollen lymph node, a dark blotch on the skin, you know the drill. Someone will nail your door shut from the outside, and you'll be trapped inside, sick or not, for 40 days. No visitors, no escape, just prayer, and the slow counting of hours. You think about the phrase "God have mercy on us," often scrawled in chalk above plague doors. You wonder who wrote it last night. You try not to imagine them dying alone. You finally drift into sleep not because you feel safe, but because exhaustion wins. You dream of clear water and clean air, and waking up tomorrow without a fever. You don't get much rest, because just as the threat of disease settles like fog in your brain, a new danger looms the law. Tudor justice doesn't come with due process or a sympathetic jury. It comes in the form of a man with a stick, a hooded figure with an axe, and a crowd that cheers as your neighbor gets publicly flogged for stealing turnips. You hear the thuds, you hear the cries. You don't flinch anymore. Your own crime. You dropped a few sour words about the local lord while drunk on weak ale. It was just a mutter. You didn't even mean it, but someone heard you. And in this world, speaking ill of the elite is as dangerous as spitting at the king himself. You go quiet after that. Real quiet. Because in Tudor England, silence is survival. You pass the pillory in town, those charming wooden contraption, where people's heads and hands are locked in place so passers-by can throw rotten vegetables at them, or rocks, or dead rats, if they're feeling particularly spicy. Right now, a poor man is chained there for poaching rabbits on noble land. His nose is bleeding, no one helps. That would be aiding a criminal. You remember what your mother said. Keep your head down and your tongue tighter. Of course, sometimes keeping quiet isn't enough. If you're poor, you're already on thin ice. And if you're unlucky enough to draw attention, say, by standing out, being foreign, or refusing to attend church, you could be branded a heretic or worse, a traitor. And traitors don't get slaps on the wrist, they get That's the infamous gallows, where you're hanged by the neck, not until death, mind you, but just long enough to have strangle you. Then, you're cut down, gutted, and quartered in front of a delighted crowd. It's called being drawn and quartered, and yes, it's exactly as horrifying as it sounds. One historical case tells of a man whose heart was ripped out and held up while still beating. The executioner shouted, "Behold, the heart of a traitor, a good crowd pleaser. You swallow hard. You're not a traitor. You just want to live. Even regular criminals aren't safe. Thieves lose hands. Adulterers are branded. Gossipers might have their tongues pierced with hot irons." That's right, Tudor. England really doesn't like a lot. Quirky tidbit of the day. Public punishments were often scheduled like festivals. People brought snacks. Sometimes ale was sold. It was like a grim community picnic. Some vendors even handed out fresh pies during What's better than savory pastries and mild decapitation? And don't forget about the Tower. The Tower of London wasn't just a fortress, it was a symbol. If you ended up there, you were probably not coming out intact. Torture was on the menu. The rack, the manacles, the Iron Maiden. It was a buffet of suffering, served cold. Historians still argue how widespread torture really was during the Tudor era. Some say it was reserved for high-profile prisoners. Others believe it happened more than records suggest. Either way, it looms over you like a storm cloud. Then there's the royal mood swings. King Henry VIII, for example, was infamous for his impulsive wrath. One day you're a favorite, the next you're a headless footnote in a ballad. You joke with a friend that your best chance at survival is avoiding any and all eye contact with royalty. That joke gets a nervous laugh, because it's not really a joke. At church on Sunday, you sit stiffly in your pew. Missing mass too often could get you fined or worse, so you endure the sermons, even when the priest veers into rants about witches, demons, or suspiciously late harvests. You keep your eyes low. By dusk, you're boned, not just physically, but spiritually. Every day is a dance around danger. Say the wrong thing, punishment, wear the wrong color, suspicion, catch the wrong person's eye, trouble. You fall asleep that night with one eye open, because in Tudor England, justice doesn't always wait until morning. Just when you think you've memorized every pitfall of Tudor life, rotting food, itching skin, the random threat of executioner, another one creeps in. Suspicion, it begins small. A neighbor glances too long at your front door. A goose refuses to lay eggs. A child comes down with a fever, and suddenly, someone whispers, "Witch." The word hits like a chill. You're not a witch, obviously. You're just trying to survive. But in Tudor England, logic doesn't matter. All it takes is one accusation, and you're caught in a spiral of paranoia and panic. You hear stories, women dragged from their homes because their cat spoke to them. Men arrested because their beard looked unnaturally red. That poor widow down the road, drowned during a trial by ordeal. She floated so obviously guilty. They fished her out and hanged her anyway. You pass a notice nailed to a church door. It warns of suspicious activity and urges good Christians to report odd behavior. What qualifies as odd? Apparently, helping someone give birth, collecting herbs, or even talking to yourself. You do all three, and more. Fringe detail. Midwives were particularly vulnerable. They had knowledge of the body, helped with childbirth, and often used herbal remedies. All incredibly useful until something went wrong. Baby born with a deformity must be a hex. Mother dies in labor, clearly cursed. You pray silently that no one needs your help anytime soon. At market, you overhear gossip about witches, marks, birthmarks, or moles that are supposedly signs of a pact with the devil. You suddenly remember a small freckle on your shoulder and shudder. It's just a freckle. You think, back home, you crush dried rosemary to scatter around the hearth. It's for the scent, not protection. But even so, you hesitate. Someone might see and misinterpret. Maybe you should burn it instead, or hide it. But hiding things only makes you look guiltier. The line between medicine and magic is blurred. You know a few folk remedies. Thyme for coughs, comfrey for bruises, a whisper to the moon if you're desperate. Old wives' wisdom passed down like lullabies. But if someone decides it's sorcery, that's it. You're doomed. Historians still argue whether witch trials were more about belief or social control. Some say they targeted the poor and vulnerable to maintain order. Others suggest it was genuine fear of the unknown, fueled by famine, war, and religion. The truth, likely a tangled mess of both. One day, a stranger arrives in town, a traveling witch hunter. He wears black, carries a worn Bible, and claims to have divine insight. Within hours, he's holding court in the village square. A teenage girl accused her aunt of causing a miscarriage. The crowd watches breathlessly as the woman is stripped and examined for signs of the devil. It's humiliating, brutal, and all too normal. They dunk her in the pond. She floats. She screams. And you turn away, because looking too concerned might get you accused next. Quirky tidbit. Some towns employed witch prickers, men paid to poke suspects with needles. If the accused didn't bleed or flinched, they were guilty. Of course, the prickers often used retractable blades to fake results. So, fair trial. Not quite. You clutch your cloak tighter as you walk home. You've done nothing wrong, but your shadow feels heavy tonight. You remember a story your grandmother once told about a healer who turned herself in before they could come for her. She thought confession might spare her. It didn't. They paraded her through town and burned her in front of the church. Ashes scattered on the same steps where children now play. That night, you try not to mutter in your sleep. Even dreams can betray you. Dawn again. The air is cold, but the sky is clear bright with the kind of blue that makes you momentarily forget how heavy life feels. You stretch, creak out of bed, and step outside. Maybe today won't be awful. Then you see it. A noble's carriage rattles past, wheels lined with polished brass. The driver barely glances at you. The noble himself, draped in crimson velvet with gold thread and an impossibly tall hat, leans out the window for air. He's headed to his hunting lodge, or perhaps a feast. He passes without a word, as if the mud you stand in couldn't possibly splatter his world. You're reminded again. Tudor life isn't just miserable, it's unequal. You're poor, your life is survival. But there's another world operating just above your head, literally, in towers and manors, behind hedges and heavy oak doors. The nobility dine on roasted swan, wear gowns that weigh more than your monthly bread ration, and wipe their mouths with imported napkins. Meanwhile, you're reusing last week's rag to clean everything from your face to your floor. Mainstream fact. The Tudor social hierarchy was brutally rigid. Nobles inherited titles and land, and the rest of society simply toiled to keep the glittering machine running. Upward mobility was rare. A peasant becoming a lord was a tale for plays, not real life. While you harvest turnips and break your back hauling firewood, they're watching dancers, listening to lutes, and debating which type of spiced wine best suits pheasant. One noble household might go through more meat in a month than your entire village in a season. And it's not just food, it's warmth. You freeze under two scratchy blankets while they bask near fireplaces carved from stone. Flames licking beneath chimney pieces decorated with family crests. Even their sickness is easier. Nobles get physicians. You get the local blacksmith's wife who knows a thing or two. She means well, but your odds aren't great. Quirky note. Noble women sometimes wore decorative masks called vizards to preserve their pale complexions. While traveling, you squint as one lady strolls by, her face hidden behind what looks like a porcelain ghost. You can't help but laugh soft. It looks ridiculous, but it's one of many things she has that you never will. Protection, anonymity, power. Historians still debate how aware the nobility were of peasant suffering. Some writings suggest genuine concern. A few lords did provide food during harsh winters. Others reveled in excess, hosting week-long feasts while entire hamlets starved nearby. Your only taste of their world is during feast days, when you're allowed scraps. Sometimes you get a honeyed tart, or a bit of roast goose. It tastes like magic and injustice, all at once. At church, you kneel beside them, separated by wealth, but equal in theory before Allah. You glance at their polished boots, your own mud-caked toes tucked under your skirt. The sermon speaks of humility. You wonder if they ever hear it. Then again, Nobility isn't all velvet and honey. You hear tales of courtly intrigue how a single misstep, a poorly phrased compliment, or an unfashionable feather in your cap could land you in disgrace, but at least their prisons are yours is a ditch or a noose. By evening, you return home to your drafty cottage. Your dinner, thin broth and half a turnip. Across the fields music drifts from a manor. Flute, harp, laughter. You close your eyes and pretend you're there just for a moment. But your hands are calloused, your belly is empty, your bones ache. This is your world. Still, you've survived another day. And in Tudor England, that counts for everything. Now, slow your breathing. Let the images begin to blur, like candlelight flickering into soot. The wind has softened. The fire just embers. Somewhere nearby, a dog settles down with a contented sigh. The manor is quiet. Even the fleas are resting. You're lying on your straw mattress. The wool itches less than usual. The weight of the day begins to lift, replaced by the hush of sleep. No court trials. No whispers of plague or witches. Just silence, like a blanket, wrapping gently around your mind. Imagine the stars outside, scattered like frost across the sky. You can't see them through your thatched roof, but you know they're distant and cold and constant. The same stars look down on nobles and peasants alike, on executioners and bakers, on every aching, stubborn, surviving soul. The world is quiet now, and you are safe, if only for the night.